my characters gotta drive the story forward? I don't care about that. Give me action. Give me a story. It's called a story for a reason. I'm not caring. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Tim Green. I am your soon-to-be future overlord of the universe. Universe? That's kind of grand, don't you think? We'll just settle with Earth. Soon-to-be overlord of Earth. I'm Tim Green. I write under the pen name T Green because I'm awesome. Today I'll be giving you 9 tips to make sure your novels are character focused and not just all plot. Let me just give you 2 definitions for a character-driven and a plot-driven story. Not a character-driven story deals with a character-driven story explores the eternal. Wow, I'm just reading it. Fuck this. I don't have enough time. A character-driven feature explores the exploration of a protagonist's internal development over the course of a story. A definition of a plot-driven story. A protagonist features a sequence of events in which the protagonist fights to obtain a goal. That wasn't that hard. But yeah, for some reason I just couldn't read it. Do it from memory. Oh well. When you get a very character-driven story, very deep in internal thoughts, focusing on what's going on in their heads, in their hearts, it tends to be really well done. Like you know these characters, they're really fleshed out, but nothing happens externally. Nothing. Whereas a plot-driven story generally has explosions, action, lots of external stuff, and nothing really internal with the character. Think of a Michael Bay movie. You have one to extreme or the other. I will recommend, if you want some help with this beyond this video, check out Jeff Gerke's book called Plot versus Character, or no, it's Character versus Plot. It's a really good book on how to help those people who struggle with either one. Tip number 1, make the character proactive. There's nothing worse than a character that doesn't do anything. And I mean anything. One of the things you'll see in stories in general is some external forces the character to move. I don't necessarily mean that it forces them to act and become proactive. No, they don't want to do anything, and an external force makes them just run away. Not because they want to, because they don't want to get caught. Best-selling author Brandon Sanderson actually just had an issue with this with a book that he was going to have come out. He actually pulled the book because he realized the character was not proactive. He just realized it was hard to get into this character because he wasn't doing anything. It was a bad choice, and it got to the point where he was about to publish the book when he realized this. An example from my work in progress, Seeing Through the Veil, my character Natalie actually sees something during a practice that causes her to, she swears she sees something, but by the time she gets back, it's gone. Well, normally, it's like, oh, I just saw something. No, after the game, she actually goes and checks it out. She goes to the area and looks for clues to see if she saw anything. She was being proactive. That is what I'm talking about. Being proactive is having them do something, not just, eh. Tip number 2, characters' choices move the plot forward. If every time the plot moves forward, it's from an external event and not the character choosing to do something, that's not a good thing. It means your character's not being proactive, it's reacting. There is a sense of the first half of your book, your character should be reacting, and the second half should be acting. That's fine, but the thing is, the choices of the character should be leading to reacting and then acting. It does not necessarily mean it's your protagonist's choices. Sometimes the villain's choices and actions lead to this. But when it's always the villain and never the protagonist, now you have a dull. That leads to the next tip. Tip number 3. Obstacles mess with the character's plans. So, you have a villain trying to capture a character. They want to run away, get the police. Okay, great. There's a goal. Now throw shit in the way so that it can't happen. Maybe the villain knows where they are and brings their goons to corner them. Now they gotta try to get to the police while not being detected. They're still being proactive because they're trying to achieve a goal, but now there's stuff in the way. You have a plan, count on it going wrong. That's a good mind frame to have. Speaking of obstacles, tip number 4, give your character issues. Having your character have issues, I don't mean mommy issues or daddy issues, you can have those, but I'm talking about other issues, stuff that can be obstacles for them. Maybe your character is afraid of dying. Maybe your character involved in a cave-in. A good example of this is in Batman Begins. Bruce Wayne, as a child, falls down a well. Bats come out and attack him, getting out of the cave. That's great. That's his fear. He has nightmares of that. Using those can be internal to their personal growth as a character. It can also be a situation where they were involved in a cave-in. Put them in a tight quarters. Oh, now they have to. It brings flashbacks to that, and then they have to try to get out of this. It causes tension, helps them to overcome their issue, helps them grow. This leads to tip number 5. Deal with fallout. You have to deal with fallout. When something big happens, a character died, their best friend, you have to deal with that. You can't just kind of and move on, like a lot of stories do. Now, I'm not saying you can't start to deal with it and then have something happen and then to delay it. Now, what I just talked about, issues, you just saw your best friend's head blown off. And you got away from the villains, but now they're back on you. You got a little bit of a moment to grieve or deal with it, but not enough. And now you have to run again. Well, guess what? You have another issue that can now be an obstacle. Maybe you're angry and you want to go march right back towards those goons in a fight, which is not smart because you have no weapons, or they have more experience in fighting than you do. It builds, but you have to deal with fallout. That helps build the character. That helps get the reader to know your character better. So you have to deal with that. Not dealing with it until like the end of the book, and then it's like a paragraph, your character is now flat. Moving to our next tip. Speaking of character growth, tip number 6. Great world building will lead to great character building. If you have a fantasy world and you want the reader to know about the world, and you just start talking about it left and right, here and there, that's great. But guess what? It's boring. It's exposition. People read stories for characters. I love worlds. I read and listen to fantasy for those things. But if the story around it isn't interesting, I can just go online and read about the world and not have to deal with the story. So the characters have to be engaging. If you do a great world building in the right way, it's for your character, not the reader. Yes, the reader will get the information too, but the character is using this. So think of it this way. You're traveling through the woods and your guide says, don't go over to this area of the woods. And it's called the land of the dead because there's mushrooms in there that if you eat them, or worse, they give off spores that make you delusional, that keep you in that area where you keep breathing spores, and the spores embed themselves and eventually kill you, draining your life force or whatever you want. That's an important thing to know, especially if they're going to run into that area later on. How are they going to get through it without being affected? Is there a cure? or a way to prevent that from happening. It helps build the world. It also helps set up possible conflicts or obstacles for your character to deal with later on. But the reader gets all that information as well. Harry Potter is a master of this. Why? Because Harry knows nothing about the magical world. In each book, what you learn about magic is intertwined in some ways to the story. Or will be building towards being useful later on in later books. So it's great. Moving to our next tip number 7. It's A to B to C, not A to C. I love great plots. I love explosions. I love these action pieces. And that's how I plot my stories. I think of all the cool action sequences that I can think of that will help the story. But at the same time, if I just did that and went from there to there, I'm just jumping around. I'm not earning those spots. So you have to go to A to B to C to D to E to F, G, and so forth. Because if you don't, and you just skip over the small or the fallout of these action sequences, or the character did not earn getting to the spot. How did you go from this action piece to this action piece? What's the fallout, or how'd you... It's not good. It's not good storytelling. It's not good anything. Not good for your characters. So you need to be doing this well. Make sure every action, or actually every cool moment that you've come up with, is earned and makes sense. And again, the best way to do this is through your character's choices. Oh look, I came back to one of my tips. Yay me! Tip number 8. The emotional resolution sometimes is more important than the external plot reveal. How do you determine this is, was there a big moment for your character that's really important for them, and you've been really building towards it, and it's been the focus piece of the entire story? That resolution is more important than the 1,000 army battle that's going to happen. Not saying you can't have that, but at the same time, you may want to spend more time on the resolution of the character's goal or the change that happens inside them, if it's been a big part of it, than the actual battle. You can still have it, but focus there. Like I said, balance is key, so you can have both these things. But if you've been spending a lot of time on the emotional journey, then building up towards the epic battle, you may not want to spend as much time on as, like I said, than on what's going to happen in your character. And finally, tip number 9, keep true to character. This tip right here is, to me, the most important. This is the one rule of writing in a sea of rules that actually aren't rules but guidelines. That's an actual rule, but a really important guideline. I know that was confusing, but suppose this. You come up with this great joke, and your character's not a joke teller, or wouldn't even be able to think of this joke, and you have him say it. No, don't do it. Don't do it. I said to stay true to your characters. If you come up with a really cool idea that you want to have, either change the character or give it to another character who would be more likely to come up with it. It's a good thing to tie into the emotional internal journey of the character, especially if it's something they have to try to overcome, being the hero. And this is a way that they can do it. It can help progress that. But again, stay true to the character. That also doesn't mean ignore growth. Well, my character would never do this, but the entire story about him learning how to do this, but he can't do that because it's not true to his character. No! If your character is going to be grown, this is what the character is going to do to grow, then yes! Do it! Do it hard! But if it's not involving the character growth and it's not something they would do, alright, it's time for the exercise. Take these tips and go through your work in progress to see if they meet if your characters are doing any of them, all of them, or violating any of them. Now you don't have to hit every single button, but if you're realizing that your character's not being proactive, other characters' actions and never his own, and it's even other characters that push him or her towards the ultimate goal of the book, you might want to change that. Finding out that your characters, you're not going from A to B, you're going to A to C to D to F to G to Z, 4 to 8. I don't even know how you got there. What are you talking about? What are you doing? How did you even do that? Well, that's all I got for you today. If you made it to the end of this video, please give me a thumbs up. I love thumbs up. I really do. If you'd like to learn more about writing, me and my buddy Adam Daly of the 01 podcast group are doing a series called The Writer's Mindscape, where we are world building a brand new world from scratch. All that information will be linked down below. I post new videos on Tuesdays. If you'd like to know when the video first goes up, you gotta hit that subscribe button and hit the alerts. Smash that alerts. Because I'm still pissed off what my computer did to me this week. I'm also going to be doing some Instagram only videos of my trip to Pittsfield, Mass, where a big scene from my upcoming novel, Seeing Through the Veils, takes place. I did some videos while I was there. I'll be posting those to Instagram first, and then before I eventually post. Go check me out over on my Instagram. Speaking of Instagram, find me on social media. All that stuff is crap. I did it again. It's left hand. Left hand. Remember that. That's all right here. Find me there, especially on Instagram. And I hope you all have a good writing week. Bye.